Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going over the Primary Arms 6x30 Platinum Series scope with a DEKA reticle from Primary Arms. So that's kind of a lot right there, and we'll get into what all that means coming up in the video. But one thing I want to point out is the Platinum Series. So Primary Arms is generally known for making budget scopes that sort of give you a lot of value, if you will, for your money. And I would say this one certainly does that, but it's in a much higher end category. So right up front, these scopes are over $1,000, generally speaking. You're going to find this one for right around $14.99-ish. So it is not a cheap scope at all, but there's a ton of things going for it that you're simply not going to find in cheaper scopes. So number one is going to be that it has HD glass or high definition glass, and there's just not a lot of factories in the world that are able to produce that. It's very hard with a camera to show you what actually it looks like when you're looking through this scope, but I assure you it's very clear. The image quality is excellent, particularly as you get into the higher magnification, which is difficult for those of you guys who do a lot of long range shooting. No. So that's certainly one good thing about it. But what we did with this test was something a little bit different. Here on the channel, you guys have primarily seen me using this on my Bergara rifle, the LRP, which is a fantastic rifle. However, where I shoot, I'm generally limited to about 400 yards in terms of engagement. So this scope, of course, does just fine in those distances, but it also excels at longer ranges. So a couple months ago, I headed out to Las Vegas to meet up with Dimitri from Primary Arms, and we were out there with his Savage 338 Lapua, and we were shooting that one out, I believe, 600 to 800 yards, and he's actually shot it with this scope when I wasn't there, out to 1,300 plus yards. And the reason we didn't do it that day is we had pretty bad winds and just weren't able to do so, at least not effectively anyway. But out to 800 yards with that 338. Federal sent out some ammunition for that I should note, certainly thank them for that. We were shooting that Federal out there, zero issues, just ringing steel all day long. So if you guys see me out in the desert shooting, that's what I'm shooting, is that 338 Lapua with the Federal ammo. But this scope was every bit up to the task. Now what we're gonna do is let the dogs take a look at it and then come back inside, and we're going to actually talk to Dimitri on video and go over this reticle and then go over the details of the scope, and at the end we'll let you know what we think of it overall. Broke the target.
Broke the target.
Well, that'll make good video. All right, guys, we have Dimitri with us, who's the inventor of the reticle itself. So I figured no better way to sort of go over the advantages and pros and cons and features of it than to have a guy who actually came up with it and go over it. So Dimitri, if you could take it away.
Okay, hi guys. Thought I'd show you guys how if we broke it down. This is basically the mill system, and we broke it down to the 10th of a mil. So the more you break it down, the more accurate your shot becomes. So starting from the chevron tip to this block here is 1 mil, 2, 3, and so on. And then we broke it down to half of a mil. So these are half mil marks. We even broke it down further to where each one of these marks is 1/10 of a mil. And what that allows you to do is at extended ranges, say you're going to shoot at 1,000 yards, to where normally from this point to that point would be roughly 36 inches. Now you're capable of holding to 3.6 of an inch and even finer, because each increment is 1/10. You can even break that down again into the 1/10 of a mil. So long story short, it gives you a very, very precise reticle for your wind holds on extended, extreme long range type shooting. Another big advantage that we found to it is that you get increased range estimation, because you're able to range estimate to a finer point, which is it's the number one reason that shots were missed further out in most of the sniper competitions. So this allows you to get very, very precise range estimation, also very precise bullet drop compensation. If you're going to use your mills as a bullet drop compensator, you can get some really fine increments going down.
Sure. And one thing that I just want to point out is generally most folks, of course, are going to be shooting, sub 1,000 yards and are going to be using a 100 meter or 100 yard zero. But one thing that's nice about this system in the small increments is that if you're an extreme long distance shooter with the glass on this scope as well as this reticle, you could, you absolutely could zero at 1,000, and then you have the capability to use those fine increments, which really matter when you have 1,000 yard zero. I mean, that's huge for those of you guys who shoot beyond 1,000. You'll know what I'm talking about. Of course, it works fine within 1,000 as well, but beyond that, it becomes, a 1 mil hold when you're shooting at 2,000 yards is, like you said, 72 inches. I mean, that's a huge room for error. So that's also another advantage I just wanted to point out. But sorry, Dimitri, go ahead.
Correct. Yeah, and then we chose a chevron because if you notice, the chevron tip is very precise and it doesn't obstruct the target. So if you're aiming at these extreme long range distances and you're aiming at something small, you won't get it covered up by a traditional crosshair. So the level of precision you get because you're aiming on the point. And one thing that we really made sure we did is, if you notice, it actually lines up with the tip. So if you were going to hold, say, 20.2 of a mil, you would be aiming at the top of the of this rectangle here, so you don't end up obstructing the target still.
Right. No, I agree. That's huge. Again, when we get on further distance, that little bit on your reticle is a lot. So.
Correct.
And folks who watch the channel here and have watched me review several optics know that I'm a big fan of the chevron tips, just for that exact reason. If you have a 1 MOA dot on your scope out of 1,000 yards, of 10 inches. So again, you're just adding error to it. So with the chevron, you eliminate that error because theoretically you have an infinite MOA. So
correct. And that's the big advantage to this, is that you can break it down within the 10th of a mil. So you could go crazy. There are other reticles that they break it down to 0.20, and they often do it on a like an L kind of ladder for range estimation off to the left or the right. Then you start zooming in, and it comes out of your sight picture because when you zoom into 30 or the higher powers, you only end up within about 5 mils. So you're only seeing here, and then you end up losing that bracket, to where this thing, it only gives you the bracket, but the bracket becomes the aiming system itself. So that's a big advantage.
Agreed, 100%. So, trying to think anything else that you wanted to cover on that reticle, but I think we hit most of it. One thing, actually, now that I'm thinking of it as I'm looking at it, the lines and the mill holds above, why did you include those rather than just the horizontal and ones below? Some folks have asked me about that.
The top ones here?
Yep.
Some people like to dial in, let's say, at 100, and they want to be 3 mils high. So you want to set your zero to that. Also, if your LOS, say you're looking down and now you had a target moving towards you, like a vehicle, you're going to end up doing a negative holding up here. Yes. So that's another reason they were kept.
I agree, and that's the reason that was my response. The second portion there, when you're shooting downhill or from a building or something like that, that's where you want your negative holds. So,
or another example is, let's say you range estimated to 500, but the target is at 400. So now you overshot and you saw splash. It allows you to still use the mill system to measure the splash, how much you need to adjust. If you're
exactly. And that way you don't have to dial in on your ring, so it saves you a little bit of time if you need that quick follow-up shot.
Correct.
Right. Okay. I think that pretty much covers it. And of course, guys, if you have other questions, you can also post down below in the comments section. I'm sure Dimitri will be checking the comments for a little bit once this video goes up. But Dimitri, thanks for coming by and explaining this system to us.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Hey, you're welcome. All right, thanks. We'll get into the details now, and we'll start, I suppose, at the rear and work our way forward. We do have the eyepiece adjustment back here, and that way it lets you focus the reticle to your eye. Moving forward, we have our magnification adjustment. You can see all the way over, it's on the 6, and then you can spin it relatively quickly to get up to 30 power. It's very smooth. This little tab right here allows you to put an aftermarket little extended lever on there if you want to. I probably will in the future. So when you guys see this in the future, I'm probably going to do that because I like the ability to spin it kind of fast. One of the big reasons is, especially with the 30 power, when you're looking at long distances, you may actually sort of under the recoil, particularly with like a 338 or something like that, you may lose your target, have to back it out, find it, then get back in. So it's nice to be able to do that really quickly. Continuing to move forward, we do have a 34 millimeter tube on there. So a lot of you guys that are used to 30 millimeter or 1-inch tubes, it's a little bit bigger than that, and that gives you a lot of things. Number one, it gives you more light gathering capability. It also makes the scope capable of just being more durable overall. So generally, the more durable scopes out there on the market, that's painting with a broad brush, but generally they're going to be 34 millimeter. And the mount that you guys have seen me using throughout the video today is the American Defense 34 millimeter mount. It's got the quick detach, really nice overall. You guys who watch the channel here know that I use these all the time because I think they're just a great sort of balance between cost and just build quality and durability. Never had an issue with them at all, and they're not the cheapest, but they're certainly not going to break the bank either. Each click on the windage and elevation is going to be 0.1 mils, which is certainly nice because you have the mil reticle and then the mil adjustments. That's what you want. You want mil or MOA. Either way, you definitely want your reticle to match up with your adjustments. So it's very easy to dial in. And as you guys can see here, the numbers are very easy to see, particularly when you're sitting behind the scope, both on the windage and on the elevation. I should point out as well on the elevation that you do have 23 mils of adjustment, which is certainly pretty nice. Again, it will aid you, I should say, in long range shooting. So if I quiet down, we'll show you what the adjustments look like. Not sure how well my microphone picked it up, but each one is very audible and tactile as well. So you definitely know when you're making an adjustment. And of course, once you zero this scope to your rifle, there's little screws in there that you guys can see probably in those little holes right there. You back it out and set your zero so that everything lines up, and you can always come back to the same zero, you know, your 100 meter or 100 yard zero, which most folks are going to be using, and then just work your mil system after that. On the left side of the scope, we do have our parallax adjustment, and you can see there it goes all the way from 35 yards up to infinity. So you can set it all the way out to 300 to 500 yards, and after that it's out to infinity. Over here for the illumination, we have adjustment settings between 1 and 11. And the first two, I should say, 1 and 2 are night vision settings. The reticle is daylight reticle. There's daylight bright, I should say. There's no issue seeing it at all, even in the brightest sunlight. You're not going to have a problem with it. So that's certainly a nice thing in my opinion. What I also like is that there's the in-between settings. So if you want it, for instance, to be set up so that way when you turn it on, it goes straight to 10, you can do so. Just set it right in between 9 and 10, and then just click it over, and you'll be on 10 and go straight to that setting, so you don't have to work through all the different illumination settings to get there. The objective lens is a 56 millimeter, so when you pair that with the 34 millimeter tube and the HD glass that we talked about earlier, you really do have a ton of light coming in low light situations. Really, you see better through the scope than you do with the naked eye. I think we covered most of the details on this scope itself. Now, it's really hard on video again to show you just how nice the image looks through this scope, but really, I mean, it's exceptional. And for $1,500, you're probably not going to find a lot of scopes that have this kind of feature, this reticle, and this kind of glass in one combination. Now, I should also note that they do make one of these with the ACSS reticle, which I'm a big fan of, as those of you who watch the channel know. But we opted with a DEKA just to kind of go over that one and show you guys what a sort of a enhanced mil reticle can do. So, what do I think of it overall? Again, I think it's fantastic. Not a whole lot to complain about. The only thing I wish they did was include a larger knob extension with it. But again, that's an aftermarket part that you certainly can buy, and I will be buying for sure. But for have the Japanese made optics, internals, glass, all that stuff in here at this price point, I think it's pretty good value now. For those of you that didn't see my Platinum Series 1 to 8 scope review, I would definitely check that out. And at the time I put that review out, there wasn't a lot of reviews of that scope out. Now on the forums, there's been a bunch more coming out, and people really sort of saying a lot of good things about that scope. And I really think that hopefully, at least after this review goes out and other people pick these up and sort of chime in with their experiences with this scope, I think you're probably going to see the same thing. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions about it at all that I didn't answer in the video, by all means, post down below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page as always, but thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you in the next video. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's fresh paint too, so you can see every hit. Left, right?
It's about 0.2 of a mil left. Now see if you put the chevron to the left edge of it to correct for it. Headshot. Did you mean to do that?
What's that?
Did you mean to do that?
What?
You domed him.
Yeah, I know. I was holding up a little bit more. I was holding a little right and a little high. Saw the wind pick it up.
Yeah, your wind is perfect. Edge of the black.
Yep.
Left. Huh?
That was loud.
I can see squirrel like crazy.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, you killed the target. You got a bolt?
Whoa.
Froze.